When Fang unleashed Fire Dragon's breath, the giant covered its face like it was avoiding a blast of heat. But what if that wasn't just a reflex? Jin-Woo's eyes narrowed as he thought about this.
Kaisel.
Jin-Woo called out, and instantly his shadow began to shimmer. Out burst Kaisel, the flying dragon, spreading his massive wings with a loud "Aof, Aof," before circling overhead.
Kree?
Jin-Woo shouted, leaping onto Kaisel's back.
Baru.
Igris, in response, Baru stretched out his own wings, and Igris hopped on behind Jin-Woo, ready for whatever came next. With both passengers on board, Kaisel spread his wings wide. Kree? A sound echoed as they lifted off the ground. Let's go, Kaisel shouted, flapping harder. The four of them zoomed straight toward the giant's head. The giant's massive eyes flicked one eye their way. Even though it was busy fighting off 1,000 shadowy soldiers, it still caught sight of Kaisel and Baru, charging full speed ahead. Jin-Woo gave a quick nod of confidence to himself. Jin-Woo had figured out the giant could slow down time just like he could. That's why this boss giant moved way faster than others of its kind. Suddenly the giant started turning toward them. Get out of the way. Jin-Woo and Igris jumped away from Kaisel just in time. The giant's huge fist slammed down with a loud "Ulpsa-boom." Jin-Woo winced as Kaisel vanished into thin air, like it had been made of smoke all along. Now Jin-Woo was even more determined. This fight was far from over. Watching his soldiers get wiped out wasn't fun, but there was a silver lining. His target was now in reach. Godries made the first move. He swung the Demon Monarch's sword through the air, and zags. A sharp bolt of blue lightning shot from the blade toward the giant's forehead. The beast jerked its head back just in time to dodge. Idris struck again, sending another zigzagging bolt of lightning at the giant's face. The monster dodged once more, barely escaping the attack. Jin-Woo knew the giant's weak spot was its face, so he charged straight for it, using Ruler's authority to pull himself closer. Baru stayed hot on his heels. Demon Monarch's daggers materialized in Jin-Woo's hands, and he clutched them tightly. Meanwhile Baru's sharp claws snapped out. Together they went on the offensive. The ground soldiers, now healed and back in action, targeted the giant's ankles, biting into them with all their might.
Them Bumas.
The mage! Soldiers' flames erupted in a fiery explosion upon impact. Bolts of lightning flashed across the sky, and columns of flame shot up from the ground. Soldiers growled and clawed at something massive. Jin-Hyo stood there, his eyes wide with shock, unable to say a word. This wasn't just a hunt anymore. It was like watching two monsters go head-to-head. On one side, a magic beast as tall as a building. On the other, a hunter leading an army of 1,000 smaller creatures. Both were terrifying in their own way. It was hard to tell which was more fearsome. Jin-Hyo thought it was such a shame. No one else was around to see this epic showdown. He felt lucky yet a little sad that he was the only witness to something so incredible. He took deep breaths to stay calm. His eyes locked on Jin-Woo. Then, in a flash, Jin-Woo plunged his dagger into the giant's eye. Shkwa. The giant stumbled back, swinging its head wildly in pain, but Jin-Woo held tight. It's working. He gripped the dagger stuck in the giant's eye, and unleashed a skill. Mutilation. Shkwash. 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 His other dagger ripped through the giant's eyeball again and again. The magic beast's body twisted and turned wildly, but Jin-Woo held on tight. As he dangled from the giant's eye, he glanced back over his shoulder. Ibiru, he shouted. On my way, boss. Biru chirped in reply. With a flick of Jin-Woo's wrist, Biru shot straight into the opening Jin-Woo had made. Now Jin-Woo was outside, and Biru was inside, working together to wreak havoc on the giant's face. The giant's mouth stretched wide in a silent roar, its massive body trembling in agony. The giant's feet were under attack by swarming ants. Rump! It dropped to its knees with a massive thud that shook the ground. One of the tendons in its ankle had been snapped. Despite everything, Jin-Woo and Baru kept up their relentless assault. Mutilation, the sound echoed. Shensh, 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 over and over like a deadly rhythm. Mutilation, shensh, 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 shensh. The giant writhed in agony, but it was no use. Soon it stopped fighting back altogether. The giant's body started tipping to one side. And then, boom, it crashed to the ground with a loud thud. A familiar electronic sound chimed in. Axe. You have defeated an enemy. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. Jin-Woo pumped his fist in the air, grinning from ear to ear. Yes, he shouted. He gently touched down on the ground, and breathed a huge sigh of relief. But then something caught his attention, and he froze mid-step. Huh? Wait a minute. Jin-Woo quickly pulled up the notification window again. He didn't have time to get excited about leveling up 4 times in a row. His eyes were fixed on the first message. He was stunned. You have defeated an enemy. Wait, that wasn't even the boss. Jin-Woo stared at the giant in disbelief. Its dull, lifeless eyes and overwhelming strength made it seem way more powerful than the other giants he'd faced. Even Jin-Woo was caught off guard by its intense aura. No way this wasn't the boss of the dungeon. The assistant insisted it was just a regular magic beast. Jin-Woo shouted with a grin as he ran toward Jin-Woo. Boss. Jin-Woo signaled urgently for him to stop. He froze, either because of Jin-Woo's signal, or because something startled him. Jin-Woo's face turned serious. Something felt off. Jin-Woo usually got a message when he beat a dungeon boss. But this time nothing. That wasn't the only weird part. There was no black smoke coming from the giant's body, which meant he couldn't extract its shadows. Just then a chime sounded. Ith. You cannot extract the shadows. Ith. What's going on? Jin-Woo wondered, confused by all these strange twists. Then, he heard an eerie sound, bones cracking. The ground shook as the giant's mouth began to open. Inside, Jin-Woo caught sight of a figure that looked human. He froze in shock, then quickly crouched into a fighting position, his sharp daggers glinting in the light. But when a voice called out from the giant's mouth, he recognized it right away. My king. The voice was polite and respectful. Just like always. It is but your humble servant. Baru stepped forward, bowing low to Jin-Woo as usual. Jin-Woo relaxed, lowering his weapons. For a moment he hadn't realized it was Baru, because the giant's massive amount of mana had hidden his presence completely. Oh, it's just you, Jin-Woo said casually, though he couldn't help but feel surprised. Jin-Woo sent the daggers back to his inventory after checking that it was really Baru. The Ant King was covered in the giant's guts and blood, showing how hard he'd worked cutting through its insides. Jin-Woo smiled, ready to praise Baru, but then he scrunched up his nose. What the heck is that smell? The gross odor got even worse as Baru came closer. Baru also caught a whiff of the stinky fluids and looked totally grossed out. The little ant stopped right in front of Jin-Woo, bowed low and said, Okay, then. Jin-Woo was about to give Baru a pat on the shoulder for doing a great job, but he froze when he spotted some mysterious yellow goo that he didn't recognize. Good job, Baru, someone said. Thank you, my lord, Baru replied, sounding shorter and gruffer than usual. But this wasn't the time to worry about the weird yellow goo. If this monster wasn't the boss of the dungeon, where would they even find it? Then, without warning, a low humming noise filled the air, like something was buzzing all around them. Jin-Woo tensed up, his defenses snapping into place. A split second later, Baru sensed it too. He quickly stepped in front of Jin-Woo to protect him. Skra! A fierce gust of wind exploded around them, strong enough to uproot trees. It came and went in an instant. Jin-Woo clenched his teeth through the blast. When the winds died down, Baru relaxed, thinking the danger was over, and moved away from shielding Jin-Woo. The hunter looked around quickly, then gasped in shock. No way. That wasn't just a whirlwind. It was the giant releasing a huge burst of magical energy. The blast swept everything nearby. Where was Jin-Woo? Jin-Woo turned to where his friend had been standing, and sighed in relief when he saw him safe in Igris's arms. Phew! Jin-Woo then looked around to see where all that magic had gone. Every last bit of the giant's energy had been sucked into the gate, like it was swallowing everything whole. The black membrane that once blocked the gate had broken apart a long time ago during the dungeon break. Now they could see straight into the strange world inside. The air was humming with strange energy, and Jin-Woo could feel vibrations all around him. He'd been through some crazy stuff before, but nothing could have prepared him for this. Something was definitely in there. His special sense was tingling, warning him that whatever it wasn't normal. Jin-Woo stared into the darkness, his heart racing like crazy. Whatever was down there sent chills all over him. He got goosebumps and his spine tingled. Babad dump. Babad. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. Jin-Woo crept up beside him, peeking at the gate nervously. Jin-Woo turned to him with a serious face. "Stay here," he said firmly. Jin-Woo nodded, his eyes wide but obedient. Jin-Woo didn't want to hold Jin-Woo back, but he felt like he might be more of a hindrance. Luckily Jin-Woo got the answer he needed from Jin-Woo, so he stepped through the gate with confidence, his shadow soldiers by his side. "Whoa?" he exclaimed, eyes widening in awe. High-rank dungeons were usually big, but this one was on another level. "This is huge," Jin-Woo muttered, convinced that the word huges was invented just to describe this place. He swallowed his breath as he crept through the passage, which was super tall and wide. He moved without making a sound, something he'd done ever since he was a low-ranking hunter, back when he couldn't do much to protect himself from magic beasts. The habit stuck even after he became an S-rank hunter, someone truly skilled. Better safe than sorry. Jin-Woo's eyes sparkled in the dark as he moved forward, staying on high alert. His soldiers, fully recovered from their tough battle, trailed behind him silently. How long had they been walking? Jin-Woo paused and Baru, right behind him, signaled for the rest of the army to stop too. Baru was born to lead, and he was great at it too. With just one move, he brought his entire shadow army to a stop. He leaned in close to Jin-Woo. "My king's hunch?" Where's Jin-Woo lifted one finger. "Do you hear that?" Where's tilted his head, listening hard, and then nodded. "I do. And yeah, Baru could totally hear it too." A faint laughter, soft enough that only someone as sharp as Baru could catch, drifted from the far end of the dungeon, where the boss was waiting. The deep, manly chuckle echoed in the distance, sounding like whoever it was had just heard the best joke ever. Jin-Woo was totally confused. Even in the darkness he expected his opponent to have noticed him and his shadow army by now. But instead of attacking or even reacting, this guy was just laughing it up. Jin-Woo also took a moment to size up his opponent. The air felt super heavy around Jin-Woo, even worse than when he fought that giant boss earlier. But Jin-Woo wasn't backing down. He let his magic explode. Whoa! Power pulses shot out from him, strong enough to blast away those shadowy soldiers nearby, if he wanted. The guy in front of him just laughed harder, sounding creepier than ever. Jin-Woo couldn't help but grin too. This guy was definitely interesting. He walked into the big boss's lair, which was a huge room where a massive giant was kept. Without hesitating, Jin-Woo marched straight toward where the laughter was coming from. His shadow soldiers followed closely behind. Stomp, stomp, stomp. They moved like a dark, shadowy army in perfect step. The spooky crew would surely scare anyone who saw them. Ha 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 ha! The man hanging from the dungeon wall in heavy black chains laughed loudly. These weren't just holding him back, some were stabbing right into his body. It made you wonder what he'd done to deserve such a brutal punishment. Jin-Woo frowned, but the man grinned at him like they were old friends. "This is totally insane," the man said, his voice full of excitement. "Awful rulers better watch closely. I'm the one who found him first." Jin-Woo stopped a few feet away, as the man kept ranting. "These chains, please, take them off me. I figured out the ruler's plan. We have to let the other monarchs know right away." But then the man stopped talking suddenly. The excitement in his eyes disappeared. Jin-Woo and the man stared at each other, trying to figure one another out. Jin-Woo noticed something weird. The man's face looked just like that huge giant he had seen before. Wait a second. This guy isn't even human. His magical energy didn't feel like anything Jin-Woo had ever sensed from a regular person. He could also speak the language of magic beasts. But why was one locked up in this dungeon? Over the past 10 years, all kinds of bosses had been found in gates, but never one held captive like this. The mysterious man did give a clue with the word rulers. There was a short silence before the prisoner spoke again. "You're not the person I thought you were," Jin-Woo said. He had no clue who this guy thought he was, but he wasn't about to argue. Jin-Woo had never seen this guy before today either. "Was it the rulers or someone else who did this to you?" Jin-Woo asked. "They're using me as a base for the real battle," the man replied. Jin-Woo had never heard anything like this before. He had tried many times to understand smart magic beasts and where they came from, but none could explain their origins. But now the beast in front of him had revealed why he existed. He was like a key piece that would start a much bigger battle, whether the beast was telling the truth or not. This could be an important clue. Who are these rulers? Jin-Woo asked. They're the longtime enemies of the monarchs. The beast replied. Jin-Woo remembered something the angel statue had said when it was cornered. It mentioned that the other monarchs wouldn't just sit back and do nothing. Jin-Woo had a hunch that one of them was right in front of him now. So those rulers chained you up like this because… Jin-Woo asked. The man nodded sadly, his head hanging low. Yes, I'm one of the monarchs. His voice turned urgent. Both the monarchs and rulers are probably after you. You're not strong enough yet to handle both sides. He glanced around nervously, as if afraid someone might overhear. You need to be careful. You'll need more influence. Jin-Woo struggled to keep up with him, but one word stood out. Influence. The man nodded. Release me, and I shall help you. Jin-Woo couldn't believe his ears. Who was helping whom here? A magic beast offering to help a human. He was so shocked that he blurted out. Why should I trust you? The man stood firm, unwavering in his offer. I will make you believe me. He muttered a spell so fast. It sounded like a video on super speed. As he spoke, hidden magic in the room began to bubble up and swirl around him. Jin-Woo's daggers instantly appeared in his hands. If there had been even a hint of danger in that magic, he would have thrown one right at the man's head. But for now he stayed calm and waited. The prisoner was using a tiny bit of mana, way less than what Jin-Woo or he himself could usually handle. And Jin-Woo didn't sense any anger coming from him. Jin-Woo stayed on high alert, ready to strike with dagger barrage, if things went south. The tension in the air was so thick, it gave Jin-Woo goosebumps. Finally the man finished chanting in a strange language, and a notification chimed in. Rugia, the king of giants and monarch of the beginning, has activated the Oath of Sincerity negotiation. Once the Oath of Sincerity negotiation is accepted, both the caster and the recipient cannot lie. Would you like to accept the Oath of Sincerity negotiation? E/N Jin-Woo's eyes locked onto the man's title. The king of giants, and it stood out to him. He thought back to all the giants he had defeated before. That also solved the puzzling mystery of why the guard at the gate had worn the same face. The man stood silently, waiting for Jin-Woo to make his choice. Jin-Woo's eyes were fixed on the blinking yes and no buttons, as he thought about what to do. He knew this decision was important because the system had sent him a message about it. It would definitely affect him somehow. Jin-Woo was definitely in control here. It was clear the other guy was at a big disadvantage. No matter what questions he threw at Jin-Woo, it was his loss either way. Jin-Woo had the advantage, and if things got tough, he could even kill him if he couldn't answer a question. Plus, this whole idea was his to begin with, and Jin-Woo wasn't some rookie who'd feel bad about taking down a magical creature. The system beeped again, sealing their deal. A message flashed up. The Oath of Sincerity negotiation has been activated. The caster and the recipient cannot lie to each other until both parties mutually agree to cancel the oath. As soon as Jin-Woo agreed, the King of Giants repeated his earlier promise, making sure everything was clear between them. Let me go, and I'll help you. Jin-Woo tried to shout, but all that came out were muffled sounds. He was completely confused. Why couldn't he speak? It felt like his voice had been locked away. The King of Giants burst into a hearty laugh. That's the Oath of Sincerity at work, he said with a grin. Jin-Woo realized what had just happened. If you truly trusted someone, you couldn't say anything that would break that trust. He had tried to say, I trust you completely, but it seemed like the oath was already in effect. Alright, I'll set you free right now, Jin-Woo said, but he couldn't shake off the strange feeling the Oath of Sincerity left him with. His heart raced as if it was gonna jump out of his chest. He still wasn't fully sure if he could trust the monarch since there seemed to be things the ruler wasn't telling him. Jin-Woo decided to ask some questions to get a better understanding of what was going on. Why are you different from other magic beasts? He asked curiously. The King of Giants let out a mocking laugh. You mean those creatures that come out of gates, he said, his voice full of disdain. Now it's my turn to ask you something. Why do you think the creatures from chaos and the monarchs who rule them are connected? His face was as serious as a king's. The creatures coming out of these gates are all defeated soldiers. They were captured by the armies, led by the rulers, and broken after being held captive forever and ever. But I am a king. I'm different from them. I've been waiting patiently for the chance to break free from the ruler's control. The king let out a soft laugh. And here we are. Jin-Woo tried to process everything as calmly as he could. If the king was truly on a whole different level, compared to other magic beasts, maybe Jin-Woo would finally get some real answers for once. Jin-Woo gulped at the thought. He had a million questions buzzing in his head. But there was one thing he really needed to figure out first. Hey, Jin-Woo asked, his voice steady even though his heart wasn't. Do the ruler's armies, have wings, and wear silver armor that shines like moonlight? The other person nodded without hesitation. Yes, those are the ruler's soldiers. Jin-Woo's eyes lit up with understanding. It all made sense now. It was like finding the missing piece of a puzzle he'd been staring at forever. Jin-Woo started to think that what he saw from the angel statue wasn't just made up, it might actually be real. What was happening? Why do these rulers keep sending monsters our way? Jin-Woo asked. He really wanted to understand why these gates even existed. If he could figure that out, maybe he could stop them from showing up in the first place, and that's what worried him most. They're getting ready for a war, the monarch replied. A war? What does that have to do with sending monsters to Earth? Jin-Woo asked. It all seemed confusing. Sure, the world had become a mess, almost like a battleground. But how did that connect to all these creatures appearing? The monarch didn't say anything more. Jin-Woo thought back to the scary incident at Gina's school. But that involved humans, not strange creatures. Why, it's to bring mana into your world, he exclaimed. It hit him like a slave. Everyone, whether they were hunters, or just regular people, believed magic beasts were like curses from the gates, while magic powers were blessings. Magic and essence stones had turned out to be awesome sources of energy, but then we found out that this energy was actually leading to a war. The King of Giants continued. The rulers figured the best way to bring mana into a world where it didn't exist before would be to shed the blood of those who already had it. What better way than to sacrifice their captives? The world had been growing stronger each year with more mana. This wasn't just a natural thing, it happened because trees were planted in soil soaked with the blood of magical creatures. And as those trees grew, they made everything around them powerful. After all, mana makes the world stronger. The rulers wanted to make your world stronger to stop it from being destroyed, he explained. And what about this so-called war? Someone asked curiously. The leader's expression turned serious as he replied. It's a rematch between the monarchs and the rulers that will turn your world into a nightmare. The battle ahead would be fierce between the rulers' armies and creatures that were once magical beasts, just like Jin-Woo had seen in his vision. If the king was right, things were about to get really bad, like seriously bad. The king's face turned dark and he said, time is running out. Cards. Jin-Woo looked puzzled. What are you talking about? The king sounded serious. Once they find out it was Jin-Woo who found me, both the monarchs and the rulers will come after you. Their messengers might already be on their way. Jin-Woo frowned. Why do you keep acting like they're after me? What's going on? The king sighed, sounding like he felt sorry for Jin-Woo. You really have no idea what's happening, do you? You? Jin-Woo nodded. I know I'm in some kind of trouble, but that's about it. The Shadow Monarch's powers were a gift from the system, so Jin-Woo had no choice but to accept them. The fact that he now held these abilities made it clear that the original owner must have turned against the other monarchs. This matched what the angel statue had told him earlier. It was likely that the original owner was once a powerful being serving the monarchs. As Jin-Woo's mind raced with questions, the King of Giants interrupted his thoughts.